The night of August 25, 2016 in Santa Rosa was still and quiet, almost too quiet. The Rincon Valley and Garden store sat in darkness, its rows of power equipment lined neatly along the walls, unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold. Inside, the CCTV camera blinked silently in one corner, its lens fixed on the store's glass entrance. The timestamp flickered, 4:05 a.m. At first, nothing. Only the dim glow of the parking lot lights. Then, movement. Four shadowy figures appeared outside, faces obscured by hoodies and masks. They hovered near the locked glass door, moving quickly and decisively. One suspect, tall and lean, stepped forward. Another handed him a large stone, their gloved hands steady despite the tension in the air. With a sudden forceful swing, crash. The glass exploded inward, a spiderweb of cracks radiating from the impact. Tiny shards glittered under the dim store light as the suspects backed away momentarily. Then, emboldened, they began kicking and striking the remaining glass until it caved completely, leaving a gaping hole. The second suspect crouched, reaching through the shattered opening. His hands worked frantically with a metal tool, prying at the inner sliding gate. A spark flashed, then another. Within seconds, the latch gave way. The metal barrier slid open, and with a grunt, he pushed the outer gate aside using an iron rod. The way was clear. Moments later, the faint rumble of an engine grew louder. Out of the shadows, a white van rolled forward, its headlights dimmed. The van stopped right at the entrance, its front bumper nearly brushing the broken glass. Doors flew open. One by one, the masked intruders entered the store. The camera caught glimpses of them. 4 figures, moving with precision. They knew what they wanted. They began grabbing power equipment, pulling Honda generators, leaf blowers, and other heavy tools off the shelves. The scene unfolded in eerie silence, save for the faint clatter of metal and the crunch of broken glass beneath their boots. Within minutes, the store was stripped bare. The thieves moved like a machine: steal, carry, load, repeat. Every motion was calculated, every second precious. At 4:08 a.m., the last suspect climbed into the van, slamming the door behind him. The driver revved the engine, and in seconds, the van disappeared into the darkness of the Santa Rosa streets. What remained was chaos: shattered glass, empty shelves, and a crime caught frame by frame. Later that morning, investigators arrived to find the store gutted of nearly $15,000 worth of power equipment. The thieves had vanished without a trace, but their clothes, movements, and the white van had been recorded in chilling detail. The footage stood as a silent witness, a reminder of how swiftly security can be breached and how crucial motion detectors and real-time alerts are to protect what matters. The Rincon Valley heist became a local legend, a story whispered among business owners, a warning that in the stillness of night, even the quietest places can fall victim to the loudest crimes. It was an ordinary afternoon in Del City, Oklahoma. The summer sun hung high, washing the narrow lane in heat and silence. The camera mounted outside a modest brick home hummed quietly, recording a scene that would soon turn into something far from ordinary. At first, everything appeared calm, just another still noon in the quiet neighborhood. The breeze stirred the grass, and across the wooden fence nothing moved. But then, at precisely 12:52 p.m., a shadow entered the frame. An elderly woman stepped into view. She wore jeans, a blue sleeveless top, a black hat, and dark glasses. There was something oddly determined about her gait, calm but cold, as though she had made up her mind about something terrible. She stopped by the fence, staring across at her neighbor's brick house, her eyes locked on the open door. For several seconds, she didn't move, as if weighing her thoughts. And then, she raised her arm. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoed through the air. Smoke burst from the muzzle of the handgun she was holding. The bullet tore into the open doorway across the fence. Without hesitation, she fired again, a second sharp blast that made nearby birds scatter into the air. Then, as if satisfied, she turned and walked away, disappearing out of the camera's view. The yard went silent again. Only the faint smell of gunpowder lingered. But it wasn't over. Almost 2 hours later, at 2:26 p.m., she returned. The same woman, the same calm walk. But this time something burned in her hand. A bottle wrapped with a rag, a Molotov cocktail. She approached the fence again, eyes fixed on the same house. There was no hesitation now. She lit the rag, the flame catching instantly in the sunlight. And then, with a swift motion, she hurled it through the open door. A roar of fire exploded outward, a flash of orange and smoke swallowing her reflection in the lens. The flames clawed at the doorway, spreading fast as the woman stepped back, watching the inferno she had unleashed. For a moment, she simply stood there, the glow of the fire dancing across her glasses. Then, she turned and walked away as calmly as she had come. Minutes later, the camera caught the blaze raging out of control. Neighbors screamed. Someone dialed 911. Within minutes, firefighters arrived, battling to contain the inferno. Miraculously, the family inside escaped unharmed, but their home, and their sense of safety, was nearly lost forever. Later, authorities arrested the woman seen in the footage. She was identified as 59-year-old Annie Durham, the next-door neighbor. When questioned, she reportedly admitted that she had ongoing disputes with the family, arguments that had festered long enough to turn into hate. What she did that day, she said, was revenge. Durham was charged with second-degree arson, and the footage became a chilling reminder of how quickly resentment can turn lethal. Because sometimes the greatest threat doesn't come from a stranger lurking in the dark, but from the person living right next door. It was early evening, the quiet hour between daylight and dusk, when the streets soften under the amber glow of the setting sun. The camera installed in the porch of a quiet suburban home began its routine recording at 5:45 p.m. The air was calm, leaves rustling faintly in the background, and everything appeared normal, almost too normal. Moments later, the electronic hum of the sliding gate broke the silence. A black car pulled up the driveway, its polished surface reflecting the pale light. Inside the car was Jermaine Yeep, returning home after a long day. As the gate began to close behind her, two figures on a motorbike passed by, both wearing dark helmets, their movements quick, their presence fleeting. To any onlooker, they would have seemed like ordinary commuters. But the camera caught something else, the way the bike slowed slightly as it passed, how the passenger turned his head for a moment longer than necessary before they disappeared from view. Jermaine stepped out of her car, swinging her purse casually over her shoulder, completely unaware that danger was seconds away. The gate was still closing when the same motorbike reappeared. This time it moved faster, surer of its intent. Before the gates could seal the property shut, suddenly the stranger leapt off, sprinting straight into the porch. Jermaine turned, startled, as the man lunged forward, grabbing at her purse. A brief, stunned silence filled the air, followed by chaos. The suspect yanked violently, trying to snatch the purse away. But Jermaine's instincts flared, not fear, but fire. She refused to let go. In one swift motion, she pulled back, her grip unyielding, her body tense with determination. Then came a blur of movement. She kicked him hard, sending him stumbling backwards. Shock flickered across his covered face as he tried to regain his footing. But Jermaine was faster. Fueled by pure adrenaline, she pushed him, forcing him off balance. The man fell, crashing onto the tiled ground. Before he could recover, she struck again, hitting him, shouting, her voice echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Just then, the second biker, realizing his partner was in trouble, rushed inside. He pointed something, a threatening gesture meant to intimidate. For a moment, Jermaine froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The two men exchanged frantic glances, their plan unraveling before their eyes. Sensing the rising danger, Jermaine stepped back, her breath ragged, her heart pounding. The attackers, now panicked, fled, sprinting toward their bike and vanishing into the street as fast as they had appeared. Silence reclaimed the porch. The gate finally shut. Germaine ran safely inside her home, trembling but victorious, her purse still on the floor. Slowly, realization set in. She had just fought off an armed robbery attempt, alone. Moments later, she ran inside, locking the door behind her. The adrenaline still coursed through her veins, but she was safe. Hours after the incident, the CCTV footage surfaced online, spreading like wildfire. People all across social media hailed her as a symbol of courage. Comments poured in, praising her bravery and instinct. The woman in the video was soon identified as 28-year-old Germaine Yeep, who later stated that the incident would serve as a reminder. Never lose your courage. Always stand your ground. You're stronger than fear itself. That evening, what began as a routine arrival home turned into a moment of empowerment, a story that would echo far beyond the walls of that quiet neighborhood.
Get down! Get down!
Hold, Daddy! Hold! I'm coming out.
It was a quiet October night in Rhyl Denbighshire. The clock on the Ring camera read 10:27 p.m. The street outside Catherine Flynn's home lay still under the glow of orange streetlights. Inside, the 69-year-old grandmother was fast asleep, unaware that her peaceful night was about to turn into a nightmare. The camera on her porch captured the first signs of what was coming, a shadow in the distance, moving fast across the grass. The figure grew clearer, a man in dark clothes, hood pulled tight, running straight toward the house. He stopped for only a second before launching a furious kick at the door. Thud. Then another. The wood groaned but held firm. Frustrated, the man turned toward the side window, his movements jerky and violent. With a final shove, the sound of shattering glass filled the air, sharp, echoing through the quiet neighborhood. The intruder, later identified as Dean Mears, 34, from Kinmel Bay, crawled through the broken window. The Ring camera caught only fragments, but what followed inside was beyond comprehension. Upstairs, Catherine stirred, startled by the commotion. Before she could rise, Mears burst into her room. His attack was savage, fueled by the drugs coursing through his system. He dragged her off the bed, striking her repeatedly. The brutality was unimaginable. Every bone in her face was fractured in the assault. The frail woman lay motionless as the man stumbled out, leaving behind a scene of horror. Miles away, Catherine's daughter, Natasha Flynn Farrell, received a notification on her phone, motion detected on the Ring camera. She opened the live feed, expecting maybe a delivery, maybe a fox crossing the porch. Instead, she saw a stranger forcing his way into her mother's home. Frozen in disbelief, she watched for 2 unbearable minutes. "I thought maybe he would leave," she later told investigators. "I didn't want to believe what I was seeing." When the reality sank in, panic overcame her. She called the police, but by then, it was too late.
Dean, come out, come out. Get down, get down!
Hold, Daddy, hold! I'm coming out. Put your hands where you can see him. I'll lie on your fronts. Lie on your fronts. Lie on your fronts.
Yeah,
Hands this lower your back.
excuse me. Dean, this moment in time is 0306. You're under arrest on suspicion of attempt murder, robbery and burglary.
At 3:06 a.m., officers from North Wales Police arrived at a nearby address. Their body cameras recorded the tense moment they found Mears. Mears tried to escape, but police surrounded him from all sides and told him to surrender. And he did, dazed, covered in cuts and glass dust, muttering incoherently. When officers moved, he raised his hands but resisted as they pinned him to the ground.
Get down, get down!
Hold, Daddy, hold! I'm coming out.
"Stay down. Hands behind your back," an officer shouted. The sound of metal cuffs clicking shut echoed through the night.
There is some Ring doorbell footage there, which had been identified from by 2 police officers. Can you explain that to me? We discussed yesterday that your fingerprint is on the window to that address as well. Can you explain that to me? Did you intend to attend at 60 Cavendish Road to murder Catherine Flynn?
Later, during questioning at the station, Mears appeared emotionless, wrapped in a yellow jacket. He did not explain, only distant stares and shallow breaths. The officers pressed him for answers, but his only response was that he had carried out the attack, but said he had no recollection of what happened. After a 9-day trial at Caernarfon Crown Court, the truth came out. Mears had taken ketamine and cannabis before breaking into the home of a woman he had never met. The jury found him guilty of murder. Judge Reese Rowlands called it a savage, ferocious, and merciless attack, sentencing him to life in prison with a minimum term of 27 years and 128 days. Natasha Flynn Farrell was left with an unfilled void. "I keep thinking," she said through tears, "if I had called the police the second I saw that alert, maybe she'd still be here." This tragedy stands as a haunting reminder. When danger appears, hesitation can cost everything. If your phone rings in the night, if your camera flashes a stranger at your door, don't wait, don't watch, call for help. Because sometimes 1 minute of doubt can mean a lifetime of regret. It was well past midnight on October 20th, 2025, at the Lockkeeper Workshop pub in Nottinghamshire, UK. The lights had long been switched off, and the laughter and chatter of the evening faded into silence. The pub stood still, its polished tables reflecting the faint flickering glow from a single security light. The CCTV camera, mounted high in a corner, blinked its small red light, silently recording the emptiness. Every chair was tucked neatly under its table, every coaster perfectly aligned, just as the closing staff had left them. For hours, nothing stirred. Only the soft hum of the fridge behind the bar and the occasional creak of the old wooden beams filled the void. But then at 12:45 a.m., something changed. A faint scraping sound echoed from the back corner of the pub. Subtle at first, almost like a foot dragging on the floor. The camera picked it up. Suddenly, one of the chairs moved, just a few inches. The movement was so slight, so deliberate, it seemed impossible to dismiss as wind, especially since all the doors and windows were locked tight. The chair stood still again, the sound ceased, and the pub returned to silence. But minutes later, it happened again. This time the chair shifted a little farther, pushing back as if someone, or something, had just stood up from it. The motion was slow, unnatural, like invisible hands were gently pulling it. And then came the cold mist, faint but visible in the infrared of the camera. It drifted in from the doorway, swirling near the same table before vanishing into thin air. The CCTV lens distorted slightly, as if something unseen had passed too close to it. The temperature in the pub plummeted. Glasses behind the bar rattled faintly. Anyone watching the footage live has sworn that for a brief moment, a chair moved. Perhaps that night, when the pub stood empty and forgotten, an unknown entity returned, drawn to the only light left burning. Since that night, the staff refused to close alone. Patrons whispered about the ghost of the lockkeeper, claiming they sometimes feel a chill behind them as they sit at that very table, the one in the corner near the door. And on still nights when the pub is quiet, you can sometimes hear it, that same faint scraping sound, as if someone unseen has just taken a seat once again.